I've shown you how to set up your seat correctly. I've shown you how to brake correctly. And today, I'm going to show you how to get the most realistic FOV possible. Hey, I'm Daniel Morad, professional GT driver, and today we're going to discuss FOV and how important FOV actually is, not just for getting the correct setup in terms of feeling like you're driving the car and you're in the correct position, but also how it affects you in terms of lap time, because having an incorrect FOV setting could make you feel like you're going really, really fast or feeling like you're going really slow. So we're gonna walk through step by step on a few different areas as to how I set up my FOV and how to achieve the most realistic FOV possible so I feel like I'm driving my actual car on the simulator. First thing I wanna show you is my setup. I've gone for 32-inch triple monitor setup. They're curved screens just so I get that wraparound effect. I feel more immersed in the sim. And personally, I'm coming from VR when I first started sim racing, and I really loved the VR. It felt like I was immersed in the action, but the ease of use wasn't there and also the performance wasn't there. So I've gone away from that, using the triple screens, way easier for streaming as well. And in order to achieve that immersion that I was lacking from VR, I've gone for a curved monitor setup with a bezel-free kit in between the monitors just to make it feel seamless, like I'm actually inside the cockpit of the car. They're 1080p monitors, 144 hertz refresh rate, so I can get 144 FPS, allowing me to get a lot more information when I'm driving and take in the information at a high rate of speed so I can hit my brake markers or my turning points with pinpoint accuracy. Let's jump into the rig and I'll actually walk you through my positioning in relation to the monitors. Now that we're sitting in the rig, I want to show you from my perspective with the camera off of the left side of my face, as close to my eye level as possible, just what I'm looking at on my triple monitor setup. I mentioned before I use the bezel-free kit. That's just to seamlessly blend the three monitors together and make it feel like I'm actually sitting in the cockpit of my car. In a moment, I'll actually go through each setting individually as to how I achieve the perfect FOV, but in terms of my physical setup of the monitors, I've put them far enough away from me where I feel like the dashboard is in its correct position. So if I extend my arms out in my real cockpit of my Mercedes-AMG GT3 or GT4 car, I can pretty much touch the DDU unit, so our display unit, and put my hands over top of it. So sitting in this position, I can put my hands out and it feels like it's at the correct distance away. My actual physical monitors, that's 69 centimeters. To my sides, I've also measured 69 centimeters from my eyeballs. So center screen, 69, sides, 69. It's a perfect wraparound. And this way it actually arrives at my peripheral vision perfectly. So I get every ounce of the monitor in my peripheral vision. I don't see my room. When I'm looking straight on, I don't get my room off to the side. So I'm really immersed in the action and I feel like I'm sitting in the cockpit of my race car. Let's move on now into the settings tab and we'll look at my FOV, how I position my car or myself in the car in game to get the correct distance away so I don't feel like I'm flying through space-time. If you have too wide of an FOV, you could feel like you're going way too quickly. If you have a very narrow FOV, you might feel like you're going too slowly. So we're gonna look at some examples of that and also how I adjust the horizon to get the perfect level sitting inside my cockpit. Now that we have the physical setup of our monitors in relation to our body, we're gonna move into the software and learn how to set up the FOV in my game of choice or my sim of choice, which is iRacing. And there's really 3 stages to getting the correct FOV. This isn't a perfect science. Okay, I don't have the exact formula to get the proper FOV, but I'm gonna try to show you step by step how I get my perfect FOV to simulate my AMG GT3 and GT4 car in real life. So step 1 is going to the options. Then we go under graphics and we select monitor. So in my specific case, I'm using 3 curved screens and I'm gonna select that at the very top. So monitor type, 3 curved screens. This will change based on if you have a flat screen, 3 flat screens, an ultra wide, but for my specific scenario, I'm using a curved screen. In terms of my monitor width, I'm using 710 millimeters, which is my 32-inch screen. So I've measured my monitor width, and that's including my bezel. Once you input that, you can move on to bezel width. Mine is 0. And the reason it's 0 is because I'm using the Asus ROG bezel-free kit. And essentially it's a light refractor. It eliminates the bezel. It blends the edges of the 2 monitors and puts it into one seamless triple monitor setup. So I have 0 because I don't want the software to correct for a black line in the way of my screen. Now, the radius of my screens, that will depend on where you are in relation to your screens. For me, if it was a perfect wraparound and it was exactly in line with my eyes at 90 degrees, then it would be a 900R curve. For some reason, I mean, you could start there as a base if you have your screen set up perfectly in line. So let's say 69 centimeters, 69 centimeters, 69, you would go with 900 because it would make a perfect circle around. But for me, I actually like 850. I felt like using 850, it was more of a trial error. I just put it at 900. It felt like it was a little too open on the corners of my monitor. It just felt like it was warping on the side. So I closed it off a little bit more and made it 850, and that seemed all right. I went with the check mark on both of these boxes because I want to use my GPU for rendering, take that CPU load off. Viewing distance, now this is easy. You've already measured from your eyeballs, sitting here in a comfortable racing position, measure from your eyeballs to the center screen, and that'll give you your viewing distance, so 690 millimeters or 69 centimeters. And once you're done with that, you just click compute and it will give you your value. So FOV for me, sitting in this position, is 169 degrees. And even when I didn't do the correct calculations of viewing distance, I actually just adjusted the slider manually. And I found that 169 was pretty much, like, I kid you not, 169.6 I arrived at. So I was right there with the correct FOV for what iRacing was telling me was correct and what I felt was also adequate. So once we have that set up, that's part 1 of getting the correct FOV. That's our general setup for FOV. Moving on to part 2, we have, this is a very, very quick and easy part. And this is something that I would say is more personal preference and driver choice. But I have already set up the driver height a little bit based on where I want to sit in relation to the cockpit. So I have it set to a 2 centimeter driver height, but you'll see how this can be really skewed based on part 3 of this whole setup. And shift horizon, we're not going to touch that for now. You'll see what I mean when we get to the driver height and shift horizon. In terms of chassis roll and the pitch, I have that set to 100. I want my car I just want my car to stay in place. If I have chassis roll and pitch, I'm going to move inside. So basically my screens will start moving around, the car will stay in place, and I'll move in relation to it. So my actual seating position and my driver head positioning will be moving quite a bit. And same thing goes with neck motion. If you have it to 100%, it will bounce with the car up and down and move all around. And I don't like that. I actually want my car to stay perfectly positioned on my monitors. I don't want the car to actually bounce on my screen. So let's say my hood was here. I don't want my hood to move up and down. And that's what will happen if you have these settings set down or if you have neck motion on 100%. So I have my neck motion on 0. That way my head just stays in this position. With my motion, I move around, which is nice because my car stays there. In real life, I'm moving, my head moves with the bumps. I'm not really taking into account that my actual chassis is moving when I'm in the car or when I'm sitting here. I'm only focused on the screens. So if I'm moving, I feel very immersed in the cockpit of the car, and that's what I've chosen to go with. So neck motion 0, and that's really part 2 to this whole setup. Part 3 is quite interesting because not a lot of people know that this is actually possible in iRacing. So this is kind of a hidden feature. So I'm just gonna get my keyboard now, and we're in the replay screen. I'm sitting in the cockpit camera, and I'm just gonna pull up my camera editing tool, and you can get that by hitting Control F12 on your keyboard, and you'll bring up the camera tool. So I'll open this box up, and now you can see there's a whole bunch of options that we can choose from. I already have mine set up in a pretty realistic manner. So, I mean, I can just load that up. It's the IRL cockpit camera. And this is more or less what I have in terms of my cockpit camera. But let's see how we can get this from scratch. So normally iRacing will give it to you with the settings all at 0. So let's go to 0 on all of these settings, and we're gonna build it from scratch now. So this is pretty much, don't pay attention to this, by the way. That's an FOV, very, very tight FOV. So if you wanna drive on the hood of your car with a telescope, this is what it looks like. And if you want to actually open up and get the correct FOV, I mean, this is too wide. I've arrived at 69. Let's put 69 in here manually. So you can just tap on the box, enter 69, 169, and that's my correct FOV. But you'll notice that the pitch is quite off. I'm looking downward. I don't want to look down because you'll see when my steering wheel turns and my hands turn, I actually see my steering wheel way higher than it should be. I want my steering wheel to line up with my actual knuckles in real life. So when this is happening, how do I get the right pitch in the car? I don't want to look at the dash, I want to look out the windshield. So let's adjust this to get the correct FOV. So I have my hands at 90 degrees, just like in game. And I'm gonna actually start adjusting the Orient P. So we're gonna go to Orient P. Let's go up on Orient P. We're gonna go to around, I actually found that 6 was, so -6 actually was correct because I wanna go up. So I'm going -6 on the P Orient, or Orient P. And another thing you'll notice is that when you do that and you have your Vanish Y set to 0, you'll get some weird bending in the corners of your screen. So to counteract that bending, you actually just want to increase your Vanish Y. So for me, I actually found that on my personal setup, and this will change, disregard that red line going across the screen, you'll find that everyone's setup will be different. I'm set up in relation to my screens in the bottom third. My eye level is in the bottom third if I was to make 3 different segments of my screen, in line with the bottom third of my monitors. And the reason it's like that is because I'm limited based on my side pillars, because I have motion, my chassis moves up and down. This is as low as I can put the screens in relation to the side beams that are holding my SimuCube 2 motor. And to get the right perspective, I have to decrease Orient P to increase the pitch or to raise up my vision, and to balance out the corners to not get that weird distorting effect, I actually go to 6 on Vanish Y. And again, this isn't a proper science. There's a ton of videos online already where you can watch how to get the exact science and calculations for that. But I'm not a scientist, I'm a race car driver, and this is how I figured it out. So you can pretty much rough it out like me and more or less do trial and error, because it really isn't a science. At the end of the day, every car is going to be slightly different, and everyone's screen positioning slightly different, the angles, how open or closed your monitors are, everything is going to be very different. If I sit myself up here, the corners of my screen actually look distorted now. So if I sit lower, it seems correct. If I go down here, it actually has now like a V. This is like an A, this is like a V. So you just need to get the right positioning and just focus on the corners of your screen in order to get the right Orient P and Vanish Y. Can't give you the exact science. You just got to try it for yourself. Just kind of rough it out, go up and down, and just try to find a barrier. If you can find like a barrier on the side of the track and just let your car go in slow motion, just drive along those barriers and see what it looks like if it's distorted on that side. And you could pretty much figure it out just by going up and down. You can also see on your dashboard that it looks pretty much correct. So I'm just gonna set this to 6. That looks good for me in terms of where I was sitting. And again, this may not work for you if you don't have a dashboard. I have a dashboard, so I'm okay to lose my dash in sim, but some of you may not be okay for that. But this is just the most realistic setting for me. And this is the information I'm sharing with you, so you can feel like you're driving the AMG GT3 like I do on the weekends. The final step is, this is kind of interesting because you can actually move yourself side to side, and this could help if you're driving a prototype or if you're a little offset and you want to straighten your positioning up. I found that in the AMG, the way it was scanned in iRacing, it's a little bit offset. So I ended up finding that I had to go with a 0.012 offset on the Y axis to get myself positioned dead straight so that my dash is lined up with the center of my wheel. So that's really interesting. You can do so much with this screen. If you want to move your position backwards and get a lot of the headrest, which, I mean, that's completely unrealistic. You're never seeing that much of the headrest. I'm forward. If you wanted to, on the offset X, you can adjust it where you have just a little bit of the headrest so you feel like you're wrapped in that head support and the seat. I personally just like it at 0. I feel like that's more or less the right position for me. And the final and most important step to this whole setup is that you actually save your car camera. Because if you do this and you don't save it, it will never reload. You'll have to do it every single time you go into the car. So make sure you go to Save Car, and you can name this whatever you want. So I'll do YouTube Video Cockpit. And I'm gonna save that. So now it's saved. When I go and I jump into this car, it will basically load up my last setting. So now every time you jump in this is the AMG GT3, it's gonna look exactly like this. And for any other car you guys drive, make sure you save your settings. This way, when you jump in, it's already set up and ready to go. I think that pretty much covers my FOV. It looks good. It looks correct for me. I set it up where I'm level with the dash. Of course, I need to do it this way because of my driver height, my screen in relation to where my eyes are, and I'm adjusting all this based on where my windshield is and where my vision is. So I want to look straight out the windshield. I don't want to look up at the top of the screen. I don't want to look down at the bottom. I'm trying to get this exactly in my line of sight where my eyeballs are straight out the windshield. And basically that gives me the perfect FOV, and hopefully it helps you guys get the perfect FOV as well. I'm gonna jump out of the rig and we'll close off the video at the desk. Those are my FOV settings to achieve the ultimate immersion on the simulator. If you have any questions in terms of how you can achieve the same, if you didn't understand it in this video, you can join my Twitch channel. It's twitch.tv/moreadness, or you can join the Discord community. It's down in the description below. You can join. People are awesome there, super helpful community. Either somebody will help you out or myself. Otherwise, please make sure to hit the subscribe button, like the video. I would love to know your feedback, what you guys use in terms of setting up your FOV down in the comments. If you have any ideas or questions, you can ask me down in the comments below. I'm super active. I answer every single comment. So far, I've answered every comment. I'm trying my hardest every day to answer your comments, and I read every single one. So if you have any questions or if you have ideas how we can make these videos better, if you have any topics that you would want me to discuss, being a real race car driver, make sure you drop it down in the comments. Otherwise, I will see you guys in the next video.